Some men break loud. I break quiet. And right now, standing outside a courthouse in Tulsa, Oklahoma, watching my own son walk out in a jumpsuit 2 sizes too big, flanked by a bailiff who won't meet my eyes, I want you to know something before we go any further. I didn't do this to him. He did this to himself. I just stopped catching him. 26 years old, Cody. 26 years old, and I finally let you fall. The courthouse doors swing shut behind him with a heavy metal clank, the kind of sound that doesn't let you pretend it didn't happen. His mother would have hated this. She would have hated every second of it. And she also would have understood, because she was the one who taught me the lesson I'm only now learning at 63 years old. Love without limits isn't love. It's just enabling wearing a nicer name. Let me back this up, son, because you need to understand what got us here, not you, the one watching this, but the boy I raised, if he's ever listening. And trust me, it isn't what you think. 10 days earlier, I got home from the shop a little after 6. I run a small engine repair business out of a converted barn behind my house, lawnmowers, tillers, the odd generator when a storm rolls through Greene County. 41 years I've had grease under my fingernails, and 41 years I've been grateful for it, even on the days my back tells me otherwise. I drive a 13 Ford F-150 with a cracked windshield I keep meaning to fix. I pulled into the gravel drive of the house on Site Road, the same house I've lived in since I was 34, the kind of place you buy, thinking you'll fill it with grandkids one day. The house was quiet. It's always quiet now. Cody's been living 40 minutes away in Broken Arrow, in an apartment his girlfriend's name is on, though he's the one who pays for most of it, or used to, before I started noticing things weren't adding up. I have a habit I never told anybody about, not even my brother Dale. After a long day, I go into the room that used to be mine and Carol's, and I sit on the edge of the bed, and I open the bottom drawer of her old jewelry armoire, and I take out the wristwatch. It's not fancy. Just a gold plate Bulova with a cracked leather band, the one Carol's father gave her the day he came home from Vietnam, the only thing he ever brought back that mattered to him. She wore it every single day of her life after he passed, right up until the cancer took her 4 years ago. I don't wear it. I just hold it. Sometimes I don't even wind it. I just let the weight of it sit in my palm for 30 seconds, and for that 30 seconds, some part of Carol is still in the room with me. That Tuesday, I opened the drawer, and it was empty. You know that feeling when your body understands something is wrong a full second before your mind catches up? I stood there staring into a velvet-lined drawer where a gold watch should have been, and I felt hollow, like somebody had reached into my chest with a cold hand and taken something out without me even noticing the hand going in. I checked the closet. I checked my old strongbox under the workbench in the barn. I checked every place that watch could possibly be, even though some part of me already knew exactly what had happened and exactly who had done it. There's only one other person with a key to this house. I called him. It rang 3 times. When he picked up, I could hear a television going in the background, some sports channel, and a girl's laugh that wasn't his girlfriend's. "Hey, Dad. What's up?" "Cody, where's your grandmother's watch?" Silence. Then, too smooth, too fast. "What watch?" "Your mother's father's watch, Cody. The Bulova. It's gone from the drawer." I heard him mute the TV. "Look, Dad, I can explain. Did you sell it?" A long breath on the other end, the kind a man takes right before he decides to stop pretending. "It's just an old watch, Dad. It doesn't even run right half the time. Mom's gone. She doesn't need it. I needed the money. You wouldn't help me, so I found a way." I said it back to him slow, like I was trying to understand a language I'd never been taught. "You found a way." "I gotta go, Dad. We'll talk about it this weekend." The line went dead, and I stood in my kitchen holding a phone that had gone silent, and I have never in my life heard a silence that loud. He didn't even pause. He didn't hesitate. 7 years old, this boy cried for 2 days straight because he lost the plastic army man his mother let him keep on her nightstand. And now, at 26, he sold her father's watch and talked about it like he was returning a rental car. I want to tell you this came out of nowhere. It didn't. Nothing ever does. If you're waiting for me to say he snapped one day and did something crazy, that's not what happened. What happened was slower than that, sneakier than that. It happened one excuse at a time, one he's just struggling at a time, until 7 years had gone by and I woke up a stranger in my own son's life, funding an existence I wasn't allowed to actually be part of. Let me take you back to when this really started. Carol passed when Cody was 19. Ovarian cancer, stage 4 by the time they caught it, gone in 14 months. I won't dwell on that part. Some of you know that particular kind of quiet already, and you don't need me to describe it. Some of you don't, and I hope to God you never do. What I'll tell you instead is what it did to my boy, and what it did to me, because those two things ended up on a collision course, and it took me 7 years to see it coming. Cody turned his grief into anger at the whole world. Everything became a fight. Everything was somebody else's fault: the doctors, the insurance company, me, for not making her go to the hospital sooner, even though I'd begged her for 2 years to get that mole checked. I turned my grief inward and swallowed every bit of it, because I was terrified. Terrified that if I pushed back on him, if I made him sit in a single consequence, I would lose the only family I had left on this earth. So I didn't push back. Not once. Not for 7 years. When he was 20, he wrecked my old Silverado, taking it to a bar he wasn't old enough to be in yet. Nobody hurt, thank God. He said a deer ran out in front of him. It didn't. There were no skid marks anywhere near where he said it happened. I paid the deductible out of my own retirement savings and never asked him for a dime back. I told myself he was just young, just grieving. When he dropped out of the trade school I'd paid 2 semesters for, he called me crying, said the instructors didn't understand him, said the whole program was rigged against guys like him. I'd already put almost $11,000 into that tuition. I swallowed it. Told him to take all the time he needed to find himself. He never once called me on Father's Day, not one time in 7 years. I always called him on his birthday. I always sent money, 100 here, 200 there, just for gas, just to help with rent, and I never once asked where it actually went. I told myself he was just busy, just distracted, just a young man finding his feet in a hard world. I'd cook supper most nights, nothing fancy, whatever I could throw together after a 10-hour day fixing other people's lawnmowers. On the nights he'd actually stop by, he'd sit across from me, scrolling his phone through the whole meal. I'd ask about his week. One-word answers. I'd tell him I loved him before he left. Yeah, you too, he'd say. Just that. And I'd tell myself, at least he's still here. At least I haven't lost him too. Here's what I understand now, sitting here telling you this, that I didn't understand then. I thought I was being patient. I thought I was being the bigger man, the understanding father who wouldn't abandon his boy the way life had already abandoned him once. But I wasn't being patient. I was being a doormat, and he knew it. He knew I would never say no. He knew I would never make him sit in a single consequence. So somewhere along the way, without either of us noticing the exact moment it happened, I stopped being his father in his eyes. I became a resource, a line of credit he never had to say thank you for, not a man who had lost just as much as he had. The first time I ever told him no, the real first time, 7 years in, was 9 days before that watch disappeared. He'd called asking for $4,000. Said his girlfriend's brother had a line on a truck at auction in Dallas, a project truck they could flip in a few months for a real profit, easy money guaranteed. I did the math in my head while he talked. $4,000. My property taxes were due that same month. The shop had been slow since the frost came early. I can't do it this time, son, I told him. The reaction was immediate. Are you serious right now? I'm serious. I wish I could swing it. You always find money for stuff you want. You just don't want to help me. You want me to stay stuck out here. Cody, that's not fair. He hung up before I finished the sentence. Didn't call back that night, didn't call back the next day. I thought that was the end of it. I thought he'd cool off the way he always did, and in a week or two he'd act like nothing happened, same as always. I had no idea he was already sitting in that apartment in Broken Arrow with his grandfather's watch in his hand, searching pawn shops on his phone. I had no idea that in less than 3 days I'd be standing in a cramped shop off 71st Street, staring through a scratched glass case at the one thing on this earth that still smelled like Carol's dresser drawer. And I had no idea that this time, for the first time in 7 years, I wasn't going to swallow it. Something in me had gone still. Not angry, not yet. Still, the way water goes still right before it starts to boil. I hung up my own phone, set it on the kitchen counter, and stood there in that quiet house a long time. Then I grabbed my keys. I didn't turn the radio on. 14 miles from my house to that stretch of road where every other storefront is a title loan place or a pawn shop, and I drove every one of them in dead silence. Just the rattle of my truck's engine and my own heartbeat in my ears. You'd think a man on his way to confront the truth would be thinking 100 things at once. I wasn't. My mind had gone somewhere strange and quiet, almost peaceful, the way the air goes still right before a storm makes landfall. I thought about Carol. I thought about the night I proposed, down on one knee in her daddy's tobacco field, sweating through my shirt, that little box shaking in my hand almost as bad as it had shaken 3 days ago standing over an empty drawer. I thought about the day the doctor said the word terminal, and how she squeezed my hand and said, "Well, at least we had all this," like she was the one comforting me. I thought about the promise I made her, unspoken. The day we buried her, that I'd hold what was left of this family together, that I'd raise our son right even without her here to help me do it. Some promises you keep by giving everything you have. Some, I was about to learn, you keep by finally taking something back. The shop was called Sooner Pawn and Gold. Bars on the windows, a bell over the door that didn't quite work right. The man behind the counter was named Wendell. I walked the length of the case and stopped. My knees actually went weak. There it was. Carol's father's watch sitting under a cheap fluorescent light between a car stereo and a pair of guitars. "Help you find something?" Wendell asked. "That Bulova," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Where'd you get it?" "Young fella brought it in a couple days back. Said it was his granddad's. Needed quick cash. Gave him 140 for it. $140. A watch a decorated soldier carried home from a jungle most men never came back from, traded for less than a tank of gas and a bar tab. "That's my late wife's father's watch," I said. "My son took it out of my house." Wendell's face tightened. He pulled out an intake log and a photocopy of Cody's driver's license without me even asking. "Look, man," he showed valid ID, signed the paper saying it was his to sell. I don't want to be the guy who profited off something like this. But under Oklahoma law, if it's stolen property, I can't just hand it back over the counter. I've got to report it, and they'll need proof of ownership before they can put an official hold on it. "I've got the paperwork," I said. "The discharge photo with him wearing it, a letter he wrote my wife about it before he died. It's all in a box at the house." "Bring it," Wendell said, "and I'll call it in." 12 hours earlier, if you'd told me I'd be driving home to dig through a dead man's letters so a detective could put a hold on my own son's crime, I would have told you that you didn't know me at all. I would have told you I'd find a quieter way to fix it, the way I always did. I drove back 40 minutes later with the documents in a manila folder on the passenger seat. The detective who came was a woman named Patricia Nunez, mid-50s, tired around the eyes in a way that told you she'd heard every version of this story there is, and still somehow managed to sound like she cared. She took my statement right there at the counter, matched the serial number stamped inside the case back to my father-in-law's discharge paperwork, and filled out an evidence hold form. Then she set her pen down, folded her hands, and here's where it got hard. Here's the part where a stranger looked me dead in the eye and asked the question I'd been too scared to ask myself. "Mr. Whitfield, I've got to ask you something, and I want you to really think about it before you answer. This is theft of property and pawn fraud on top of it, since he lied on the intake form about it being his to sell. Combined, given the sentimental appraisal you're describing, we're not talking about a slap on the wrist here. This could be a felony on a 26-year-old's permanent record. Are you sure this is what you want? Because once I file this, there's no pulling it back." She studied me a second, then nodded slow, like she'd watched a man make this exact decision maybe a dozen times in her whole career, and it never got any easier to witness. "All right," she said. "I'll get the paperwork moving. You said he's supposed to be at some family thing this weekend?" "His girlfriend's family reunion, Saturday, out at Grand Lake. We'll have someone out there." She looked at me the way you'd look at a man doing something he wasn't sure was right. Like I was somehow the villain in this, the father who was supposed to shield his son from the world no matter what the boy did to deserve otherwise. But here's what nobody in that pawn shop understood. I had been protecting him for 7 straight years, and all that protection had built was a son who believed consequences were something that happened to other people. I didn't want to punish him. I wanted to save him. And I was starting to understand that sometimes the only way left to save somebody is to let them finally fall. Wendell held the watch in a small envelope while the report finished. When Detective Nunez handed it back to me, I held it a second before slipping it into my shirt pocket, right over my heart, the same place I'd carried Carol's ring the day I buried her. I drove home with the windows cracked, that late October air finally smelling like it wasn't quite summer anymore. Somewhere on Highway 51, I pulled over at a gas station and made the mistake, or maybe it wasn't a mistake, maybe some part of me needed to see it, of opening Facebook. There, he was, standing by a bass boat that wasn't his, a beer in his hand, grinning at the camera. Caption: living my best life, no thanks to anybody. Next photo, 20 minutes newer. Him and his girlfriend's brother, arms around each other's shoulders, laughing at something off camera, golden light hitting both of them like a commercial for a life neither one of them had actually earned. While I was driving home with his dead grandfather's watch sitting in my shirt pocket, my son was 40 minutes away posting about his best life, funded by breaking mine. And here's the part that scared me a little. I didn't feel guilty watching it. I didn't feel a shred of doubt. I felt something closer to relief, like I'd been carrying a hot coal in my bare hand for 7 years, telling myself the burn wasn't that bad, and I'd finally, just let it drop. I got home a little after 7. I went upstairs, opened the drawer, and set the watch back exactly where it belonged. I closed the drawer slow, the way you'd close a door on a room you don't plan on going back into for a while. Then I went downstairs, made myself a plate of leftover chili, and sat at the kitchen table by myself. Saturday, 4 days out, he'd be standing at that family reunion thinking he'd gotten away with it clean. He had no idea what was going to be waiting for him by the boat ramp. If you've been with me a while, you know how these stories go. Hit that like button and drop a comment letting me know where you're listening from tonight, because I read every one of them. Saturday came slow, the kind of slow where every hour drags its feet on purpose just to spite you. Around 1 in the afternoon, Detective Nunez sent a text. Reunions at the Lake Pavilion off County Road 20. Will be in position by 2. I didn't drive out there to gloat. I didn't go to yell. Some of you might think I should have stayed home and let it handle itself quiet, out of sight, but I needed to be there. I needed to stand at the edge of that parking lot and prove to myself that when he looked around for me to fix it, the way he always had, I wasn't going to step in front of that train for him one more time. I parked my truck under a sycamore tree at the edge of the gravel lot, close enough to see the pavilion, far enough not to be noticed right away. I watched him carrying a cooler up from the boat ramp, laughing with his girlfriend's cousins, a paper plate of ribs in one hand. 2 officers in plain clothes came around the side of the pavilion just as he set the cooler down. Cody Whitfield? Yeah, that's me. Still grinning. Still not understanding. You're under arrest for larceny and pawn fraud. Turn around and place your hands behind your back. The shift on his face was instant. Confusion, then something closer to fear than I'd seen on him since he was a boy waking from a bad dream. His girlfriend screamed. Her brother stood frozen with a phone half raised. And as the cuffs clicked shut, his girlfriend spotted me standing by that sycamore tree and shouted loud enough for the whole reunion to hear. What did you do? Cody found my eyes across that gravel lot. Dad, tell them this is a mistake. Dad, please. I didn't move. I didn't say a word. I just stood there with my hands in my pockets and watched them walk him to the car. I watched until the door shut. Then I got in my truck and drove home, and I sat in my quiet kitchen and let myself feel whatever it was I was feeling. It wasn't joy. I want to be honest with you about that. There was no part of me that felt good watching my only son get walked to a squad car in front of people who'd remember it for years. But there was a small, tired, 7 years worn-down part of me that finally exhaled, like I'd been holding my breath since the morning we buried his mother, and I could finally let it go. He called that night. County lockup, one allowed call. And of course it was to me. I almost didn't pick up. I watched the screen ring his contact photo, a picture from 4 Christmases back when he still hugged me like he meant it. I answered on the 4th ring. Dad. His voice cracked already. Dad. Oh my God. You gotta come get me. They're saying this could be a felony. Tell them you gave me permission. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. I can't do that, Cody. A beat of silence, then sharper. What do you mean you can't? I'm your son. You're right, I said. You are my son, and I have failed you. I heard his breath catch, like he thought this was the turn, the part where I always softened. For 7 years, I said, I let you treat me like an ATM machine. I let you take from me and never once asked you to give anything back. I let you disrespect your mother's memory and your grandfather's, and I told myself I was being a good father by staying quiet about it. But I wasn't. I was being a coward. I was so scared of losing you that I forgot to actually raise you. Dad, please, you don't understand. If this stays on my record, I lose the apprenticeship. I lose everything. I'm not bailing you out. My voice didn't shake. I want you to know that 7 years of swallowing everything, and in that one moment, my voice didn't shake at all. I'm not hiring you a lawyer. You're going to sit in that cell, and you're going to think about what you did, and when you get out, you're going to face whatever comes next. You're supposed to protect me, he said, sobbing now, ugly and raw. You're my dad. No, Cody. I'm a father who finally loves you enough to let you fail. I hung up. I sat there a long time after, staring at that phone. I thought about Carol. I thought about what she'd say if she could see this. And I knew she'd be heartbroken watching her boy in a cell. But she'd understand too, because she was the one who taught me, long before any of this, that love without limits isn't love. It's just enabling wearing a nicer name. I had enabled our son into becoming a man his own mother wouldn't recognize. That night, for the first time in 7 years, I slept clean through until morning. The consequences stacked up fast, once a person finally stopped standing in front of them. Cody spent 4 nights in county before a judge set bail I didn't post. His girlfriend's father posted it eventually, a man I'd met maybe twice in my life. When Cody finally walked out, he had a felony charge sitting on his record that wasn't going anywhere, no matter how many lawyers his girlfriend's family found for him later. The apprenticeship program he'd been coasting through for 8 months let him go the following week, not a good fit going forward. Which is a polite way of saying they'd seen the video his girlfriend's cousin had posted online before anybody had the sense to take it down. His girlfriend's brother, the one with the truck deal, stopped returning his calls within a few days. The girlfriend herself lasted about 3 weeks before she packed his things into the same apartment he'd stopped paying rent on and told him to find somewhere else to be. He'd spent those 4 nights in that cell with nothing but his own thoughts. No phone, no friends, no filtered photos of somebody else's life. Just concrete and the sound of his own breathing. And when he finally walked out into the daylight, he had exactly what he'd wanted for 7 years. No father telling him what to do, no rules, no expectations weighing him down. He just didn't understand yet what that actually costs a man. In the weeks that followed, I did the work I should have done years earlier. I called his landlord and confirmed I was off the lease for good. I canceled the phone line I'd been paying half of without ever really admitting it to myself. The bleeding that had been draining my retirement for 7 years finally stopped. Then, on a Wednesday afternoon, he came to the house. I saw him through the kitchen window walking up the gravel drive, wearing the same flannel jacket he'd worn to his mother's funeral. He tried his key in the front door, and I watched his face when the deadbolt didn't turn. I'd had the locks changed that Monday. He knocked. I opened the door and stepped out onto the porch. Beside me sat one duffel bag, packed, zipped shut. What is this? His voice was already trembling. Your things. All of them. His face crumpled. Dad, I've got nowhere to go. I've got nothing. This is the part where the old me would have broken. This is the part where I would have said, come on inside. Let's talk this through. I'll always be here, no matter what you do. I said some version of that sentence for 7 straight years, and every single time I said it, I taught him a little more that nothing he did would ever actually cost him anything. Not this time. You've got exactly what you wanted, I said. Freedom. No father telling you what to do. No rules, no expectations. You're finally free, Cody. Isn't that what you called me? Controlling. A warden. Well, nobody's controlling you now. That's not fair. Fair, I said, keeping my voice level. You sold your grandfather's watch for a bass boat weekend and a case of beer. You told me it was just an old watch. Well, this is just a house. Go build your own. He stood there on that porch a long moment, mouth open, waiting for me to take it back. I'd taken everything back. For 7 years. Every ultimatum, every I mean it this time, every line I'd drawn that washed away the second he cried hard enough. I didn't take it back. I picked up the duffel bag and set it down at his feet. Then I stepped back inside, closed the door, and turned the deadbolt. I didn't watch him carry it to his car. I'd spent 7 years watching him walk all over me. I figured I'd earned the right not to watch this part too. That evening, I made myself supper, really made it this time, not just something reheated standing over the sink. Grilled a couple of pork chops on the little grill out back, the kind you get from the meat counter at the Homeland on Main Street, the kind Carol used to make every Labor Day. I sat out there and ate slow, listening to the neighborhood settle into evening, somebody's dog barking 2 yards over, the last of the cicadas working up their noise before the cold set in for good. After, I went upstairs, opened the drawer, and took the watch out one more time. I sat on the edge of the bed and held it in both hands the way I used to, before any of this, before a pawn shop and a detective and a family reunion full of strangers filming my son's worst day. I let the last of the evening light catch the crystal face, same as it always had. I spent 7 years trying to hold on to a boy who didn't want to be held the way I was holding him. I told myself, if I gave him everything, every excuse, every dollar, every second chance, he'd stay close. He'd love me back the way I loved him. But he didn't stay close. He took, and when he finally took the one thing in that house I couldn't replace, I understood something I should have understood a long time before that empty drawer. Love without boundaries isn't love. It's hostage-taking wearing a kinder word. And I was done being a hostage. I closed the watch back into its box, gently, and set it in the drawer. I closed the drawer. I didn't feel angry sitting there. I didn't feel triumphant either. This was never about winning anything. I just felt quiet. Still. The kind of still you only get to feel once you finally set down something heavy you'd been carrying so long you'd forgotten it even had a weight to it. And for the first time in 7 years, sitting in that quiet house with the last of the daylight fading through the window, I finally had it back. My own life, the one I'd been handing over a piece at a time without ever once being asked to. He sold his grandfather's watch for a weekend on somebody else's boat. He said it was just an old watch. He got nothing out of it that lasted past Sunday morning. And I got my life back. If this story meant something to you tonight, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and tell me down in the comments where you're listening from. I read every single one.